Hey guys, welcome to Anathema. My name is Lauren Chen. I am so happy to have everybody here. A big thank you, especially to everybody in the live chat and who's tuning in live. I appreciate you. We are right now streaming on X, Facebook, Twitch, Rumble, and Kick. Oh, hang on. Nicholas Montevervita. I'm sorry. Hi, Lauren. Greetings from Germany. Good to see you from Germany. It's always I think my audience is like 75% American, but I appreciate everyone who's watching in different countries. We have a lot to talk about today. I'm beginning to think these shows are eventually just going to descend into, I don't know, legal analysis from someone who is not a lawyer, so probably not the best fit. But we have the Carmelo Anthony case. We've been covering Rick Chow, Chud the Builder, who else? Another different case recently. Yeah, but now we have Carmelo Anthony's trial starting. You guys probably remember a little bit ago at this point, he stabbed Austin Medaf dead at a high school track meet. So he was given bond, unlike Chud. So he hasn't been sitting in jail this entire time, but now his trial is finally starting. So we're going to be going over what the initial reports on that are. Then we also have, oh yes, a YouTuber, someone I'm not familiar with, Jesse Ridgway, I think his name is. He is under fire because he, for some reason, shared not only that his wife had an abortion, but also that the reason for that abortion was because their child had Down syndrome. I don't know if he was expecting sympathy, but that's certainly not what has happened. Faceless Bounty Hunter on Kick. Greetings, Lauren from the American South. Hello. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee right now, so you probably may not be too far from me. MV Mars on Kick. Did you see the clip of Chud on Duel after getting released? LOL. He left the country. No, actually, I haven't kept. The last I heard of the Chud case, maybe we can look this up together if we have time, was that he had been denied bond because Tennessee doesn't allow like online gambling. And so they didn't want to take funds from a company that was online gambling. So I don't know. We'll look into it though. If we have time, we can learn together. Then an update on the LA mayoral race. So last time I streamed was Wednesday. I guess the primary for California was Tuesday. So, by Wednesday, my stream was basically celebrating the fact that LA would be going to the polls in November for Karen Bass versus Spencer Pratt, i.e. the two candidates that got the most votes in their primary. Apparently, though, it's looking like some funny business happening in LA. They're saying the votes are not counted, won't be counted maybe for several weeks. And it seems like, conveniently, Nithia Ramen, who is the third candidate, this progressive socialist, she is now gaining on Spencer Pratt in some might say a suspicious fashion. So we're going to be looking at that. We also have the Trad Wives article that we have much discussed but not actually gone over. Is the phenomena of trad wives just a LARP? We're going to talk about that. But first off, we're going to be starting with the Carmelo Anthony case. Okay. So apparently some people in chat, are saying that the Chud thing is not real. But Catholic Con on Twitch, love using the emotes. Happy to see you guys using those. I need to give us some more of them though. But let's talk about Carmelo Anthony. So for people who don't remember, Carmelo Anthony, this gentleman on the right, I don't know if it's fair for me to call him that, but he, at a high school track meet, stabbed to death this person on the left, Austin Medaf. And if you're unfamiliar with the story and listening on the audio-only platforms, by the way, thank you for our podcast listeners. We're on basically every platform that has podcasts. But Carmelo Anthony, black, Austin Medaf, white kid. Shouldn't be surprising that this kind of escalated into a case about racial tensions. And actually, if we remember, Carmelo Anthony, he ended up raising, I think, $600,000 on Give, Send, Go or GoFundMe for his defense. And it was basically just black people siding with him. It seems like out of pure tribalism. Now it seems like Carmelo Anthony supporters are under the impression that Carmelo Anthony was assaulted by Austin Medaf and some other white people. And so that's why he stabbed him. It was in self-defense. Where they got this from, I don't know. But okay, People are asking me in the chat if I would do a show with Nick Fuentes, the Raven 99 on Rumble. Would you do a show with Nick Fuentes? George Bush 99, would you do a show with Nick Fuentes? I guess it depends on whether it's me going on Nick's show, because he has not offered me that. I don't think he really has guests on his show, period. And actually, I've talked about that before. I think it's interesting how like he has, I think, rightfully pointed out that he's been blacklisted from a lot of shows, but he also doesn't invite people on his show. So I feel like, there's maybe a bit of a give and take that should be happening there. But yeah, I mean, I would be open to it. I previously had a lot of people when I was with The Blaze asking, will you do a show with Nick? Would you interview him? I asked The Blaze people if I could and was told no. I don't have any leadership above me here to tell me no anymore. So yeah. Pog Dog on Twitch, just don't show up at his door with a cell phone, could go hilariously. That's fair. I don't know if you guys have seen those that ring cam footage of that woman who showed up at Nick Fuentes' house, but he ended up pepper spraying her and she tried to press charges. I think they ended up getting dismissed because don't show up at someone's house, especially when they've recently had people show up trying to kill them. Yeah. Ed Gergens on Twitch, people rooting for the killer's acquittal, let alone funding for his defense, are just doing us all a favor, telling us exactly what type of people they are. So yeah, let's talk about this. This is trending right now. This is a huge story, probably the biggest court case going on in America right now. Eric Doherty on X says now Carmelo Anthony's defense is falling apart in the murder trial of Austin Medaf. He might face life in prison if convicted. It says prosecutors in court show jurors surveillance footage they say tells a different story than Anthony's defense. It reportedly shows a brief confrontation between Anthony and Medaf, not a larger group, before Anthony runs from the scene, and that fight, it only lasted about 4 minutes. Because right now, what we are hearing from, and we'll look into it, some of his supporters are saying, oh, there was a whole group, a gang of teens, white teens, that were intimidating Carmelo Anthony, pushing him around, and so he stabbed him in self-defense. He was feared for his life. Apparently that defense is not really looking good right now. Jurors heard an emotional testimony from Metcalf's track coach. He said that Metcalf was helping lead setup efforts that day, which basically means he was in charge of setting up the tent and equipment. The coach testified and said athletes don't just go under other teams' tents. This is something that's understood between the athletes. The final jury does not include any black jurors. It's also noted prosecutors say this case has nothing to do with race and it should be decided on the facts. This trial is expected to last up to 2 weeks. Oh, yes. And that's another thing that people are talking about. So the jury selection happened a few days ago, and there was Lil Mo Music. When will you stop grifting and be objective? You know what? I never claim to be objective and without bias, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. And yeah, when it comes to the Carmelo Anthony story, seems pretty clear that this guy just kind of murdered Austin Medaf for reasons I don't know. And hang on, let's talk before we get into it more, the jury selection. So jury selection happened and there are no black jurors on the case. It is only white people. And now his supporters, Anthony's supporters, are already claiming that this just goes to show how biased against black people the system is. To which I have to say, the idea with like trial by jury is to be judged by a jury of your peers. If people are under the assumption, it seems like black people are, that you cannot get an impartial jury if the people aren't your same race, doesn't really seem like it's going well for a multiracial society, does it? I mean, let's think about that. You should, if we're all Americans, if we're all Brits, whatever it may be, it shouldn't matter what the racial makeup of the jury is, because these should be, your fellow citizens. However, the fact that it is such a big scandal, apparently, that black people have to have white people on their jury. We saw this also recently with the redistricting efforts, that black people have to be in the same voting district as white people. Maybe that's proof that we don't really have integration. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Like, you shouldn't fear because, oh, wait, hang on, the judge is the wrong race. And don't get me wrong, I understand people who think that. We recently saw that Rick Chow, the person who denied him bond, and the reason why he had to sit in jail for 3 years, only to be found eventually innocent, it was a black female judge. And no, I don't think that she looked at this case objectively. I think that she was very biased. I think that's why Rick Chow lost 3 years of his life. And, the people who are supporting Carmelo Anthony and lamenting that he doesn't have a more black jury, well, they're onto something, because it is true, statistically speaking. There have been studies on this. Oh, hang on, wait. Stop sharing instead of sharing. Black jurors are less likely to find black defendants guilty, and they're also much more likely to find white defendants guilty. So it kind of seems like, the people who are worried about this, the racial makeup aspect, they're not wrong in saying that it could affect the case, but it shouldn't be that way, is what I'm saying, right? Andrew Branca, in response to Carmelo Anthony having an all-white jury, he brings up this footage: white defendant guilty. If there's white jurors, it's only 39%. If it's a non-white juror, 73% they're likely to find him guilty. If it's a non-white defendant, 32% chance he gets found guilty by a white juror, only 24% chance by a non-white juror. So I feel like multiracial societies only operate under the presumption that racial tribalism does not exist, because otherwise there's going to be gross inequalities like we're seeing with that. It shouldn't, someone's innocence or guilt should not be dependent on the racial makeup of a jury. But we're seeing time and time again that racial bias is very real. And actually, the people who exhibit the least racial bias, the least in-group preference, are white people. Black people, I think, by and large, have the highest rates of not only in-group preference, but out-group disfavorability. This is concerning. You can't have a functioning legal system when you have these types of biases. So yeah, I understand why Black people are upset about this. It's because, well, it seems kind of like they're a lot less likely to just say, oh, no, he didn't do nothing, and let him go if there is a Black jury. So you might be wondering then, why is there no Black jurors on the team, right? What happened? Was it just racism that got them excluded? Well, actually, no. This is kind of interesting. But there were, when you're looking for a jury, you send out a lot of summons, a lot of requests, more than what you need. So you have a lot of people they have to sift through to see who's eligible. You're not supposed to have anybody that has already biases formed in relation to this case, which a high profile case like this is hard. That's why sometimes you might have a case that's moved to a different area. A local news story blows up. It's really hard to find a juror pool that's not already got a bias. And so sometimes you have to move it. But so yeah, you get rid of people who already have strongly formed opinions about that. You try to get rid of people who seem like they're not going to be able to be objective. Clearly, this is not an exact science. But apparently, there are people who were Black who were kind of summoned to be at Carmelo Anthony's jury, but they ended up not getting chosen for the final selection because they basically came out and said that they don't want to give him prison time because he's Black. I'm not even kidding. And let's see, where is the... Oh, yeah. So this post from Christian Helens on X: there are no Black jurors in the Carmelo Anthony trial because the prospective Black jurors told prosecutors they would not vote to convict Anthony because he's Black. And this is not an exaggeration. And this is from a little clip. Another prospective juror raised eyebrows after admitting, quote, "I don't know if I feel right putting a brother in jail," when asked about finding a Black defendant guilty of murder. Prosecutors repeatedly reminded the panel there were no right or wrong answers and encouraged jurors to be candid about any biases that could affect their ability to weigh the evidence. We also have another person who was dismissed because apparently they said that he looks like a child. So yes, there are no Black jurors on the jury ultimately, but it seems to be because the Black people who were called in this specific case could not be trusted to be objective and to, not just operate off of in-group tribalism. Schooler on Twitch: I have jury duty in a few weeks. What should I do? So apparently jury duty is really easy to get out of, but I'm the type of person, depending on, I'm a true crime fanatic. I would be kind of interested depending on the case. Do you guys know the Luca, what was his name? That Canadian who was basically he beheaded people. It was this big case in Canada. Luca Manzotti, is that him? No, I don't think so. Dang it, this is going to bug me. Let's figure it out. Okay, Luca, murderer, Canada. So yeah, Luca Magnotta. Okay, so he murdered this person in Canada. Canada doesn't have a lot of murder cases, or at least it didn't. High trust society and all that. But I know someone who was actually on that jury, and she said it was like the most fascinating experience that she ever had. Stevie McSphincter says, tell them you have anxiety and it will interfere with your ability to serve. Okay, yeah, you can get out of jury duty, but honestly, if you're a good person, if you're sane, you're rational, you're logical, I think it's probably for the greater good that you just do it, because otherwise who knows what type of person might end up getting you get replaced with. And then the justice system really does depend on juries being competent and doing their job well. And unfortunately, right now, it's like the dumbest people are on the juries because they're the only ones who weren't smart enough to get out of it. It's like, I don't know if that's how it should be. Fallen Radiant on Twitch, jury duty wouldn't be so bad if it didn't move at a snail's pace of government, endless waiting and inactivity. It's true. And actually, I mean, you have a right to a speedy trial, or you should, but that doesn't really happen. And so that's too bad for the people like Rick Chow who end up having to rot in jail as they are awaiting their trial. And so right now, there's only, I think, 27 people from the public who are being admitted into the trial. It seems like they're really trying to keep a hold of this. This is not being broadcast. And Carmelo Anthony has supporters outside every day who are getting into confrontations with journalists and Austin Medaf supporters. We have here a courtroom drawing. This is from Cinema Shogun. It says the first courtroom sketch of Carmelo Anthony has been released. They cut off his dreads and put him in an oversized suit to make him look as young as possible. They hope that a fresh haircut will convince the jury that he's just a good kid that shouldn't go to jail for stabbing a white child in the chest. Carmelo has been celebrated and rewarded ever since he murdered Austin Medaf at a school track meet. His community lifted him up as a hero and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for him to reward him for killing a white kid. And so this is all accurate, by the way. And I think this is what's bothered a lot of people. Everyone deserves a fair trial. I want that for Carmelo Anthony as well. But it seemed like as soon as the news broke that there was this, young white kid who was stabbed by a black kid, the black community, or at least a lot of them, really didn't waste any time in just kind of blindly siding with Carmelo Anthony without any of the facts, fundraising him against $600,000. And that didn't leave a lot of people feeling good. I even, in response to Chud the Builder's fundraiser, I saw people saying, yeah, like they raised $600,000 for that guy who stabbed a white kid to death. Why shouldn't we fund our own? Like, yeah, for the longest time, white people have been told that tribalism is bad, identity politics is bad, which is like potentially fine if that's the same standard that other people are being held to, that other groups are abiding by. But it's not. It's not the same standard. For the longest time, Black people, Hispanic people, even Asian people, everyone else has been able to have their own anger preferences, their own tribalism, except for white people. And I think white people are finally realizing that, no one else is going to stand up for you if you don't stand up for yourself. That's how it works on a personal level and on a group level as well. Like, I know that, like, as someone who's Chinese, all of the stuff that is being said about Chinese people and culture and society, if you don't say something, no one else is going to say it for you. And that's, for better or worse, Black people do have that. They do protect their own interests. Now, rallying against this kid who murdered a white kid seemingly in cold blood, is it going to be a smart move to ameliorate racial tensions? Probably not. But there we go. And actually, let's look. And we have some footage from the Carmelo Anthony supporters who are outside the courthouse right now. And yeah, obviously this is basically along racial lines. Follow Savannah Hernandez, by the way, if you don't already. She's does great on the ground work, but she's also there right now. So a lot of these clips are from her. But let's look at what these people have to say.
He was not an aggressor. Karmelo was not an aggressor. He was minding his damn business when them boys came up to him. We the crowd. We agree. Carmelo Anthony will walk free. We the crowd. They silence Carmelo and his family. Carmelo Anthony will walk free. We the crowd. We agree. Carmelo Anthony will walk free. We the crowd. We agree. Carmelo Anthony.
I mean, I don't even know where they're getting the idea that he was just minding his own business. We have more footage of this.
Love, respect, and peace, that's us. Love, respect, and peace, that's us. Love, respect, and peace, that's us. Love, respect, and peace, that's us.
I mean, chanting love, respect, and peace. That's not that bad. But unfortunately, some of the protesters got a little bit more active and ratty than that. Here we have this from Savannah Hernandez.
I'm gonna push you if I get close enough. Push you right into that crash. You heard what I said, cracker. Neanderthal, I don't give a fuck what you say. Fuck you, cracker. Fuck you, cracker. Fuck you.
Happy to throw out racial slurs.
Get out the road, please. Get out the road, please.
You still a cracker. You still a cracker. You're a cracker, motherfucker. You're a
And it's funny because I don't know a single white person who really cares about being called a cracker. Like, they know the person who's calling them that, not a fan of theirs. But I don't know if like this man expects that these white people he's yelling this at are gonna descend into some like chimp out rage like they would if it were like a black person being called the N-word. But no, it's not the same. Something like self-control exists, so you're not gonna provoke them into acting like a fool. Fidget Guy says, I blame the liberal media. Too many people believe what the TV tells them to think. Has the liberal media even said that Carmelo Anthony acted in self-defense? I think that's literally just purely the creation of these BLM, these black activists. Optimistic realizer, not everything is self-defense. LOL. And that's like, here's the thing. We believe it's self-defense. That's a perfectly valid justification for the use of force. We just saw that with Rick Chow, but I don't understand how you can not think that pulling a gun on someone requires self-defense, but then, being told to leave a tent, that requires stabbing someone in the heart. Yeah. Okay, let's continue to look at this though. Yeah, so this is a TikTok that's going viral right now on Black TikTok, basically perpetuating the lie that Carmelo Anthony
Finally,
did do
y'all,
nothing.
a witness came out and made a statement in the Carmelo Anthony case, and I have to let y'all hear this because this is the piece I have been missing, that I have been waiting for the witnesses, for the students around the situation to see what happened, and this is what he had to say.
Trying to get back to their cars, or
this is the witness.
Get in, places where they, wouldn't get all extra wet. Dude was sitting up on the tent, right? He was on his phone, right? My daughters was up under the same goddamn tent. Yeah.
He's talking about Karmelo.
I'm
like, this is
my kids, but at the same time, they're in the same vicinity, so I'm watching everything going on around it because I'm there for my children. So, dude walks up, McKellen, bro, he wasn't even honored.
Can we just take a minute to appreciate how, the lack of clarity in the way that this person is talking? And I'm assuming he only speaks English. Like, how is this you only speak one language and this is the best you can do expressing yourself? It's crazy.
They came from a whole separate tent.
He's talking about the twins.
They intentionally went over there to this kid, man. Dude was sitting there on his phone just trying to get dry.
Karmelo was on his phone.
They went from another. They grabbed this man.
Grabbed him.
They tried to punch on dude. Dude went in
Yep.
there, and what they went to try to jump this dude and punch on this dude, man.
They were trying to punch on him.
Dude. That's what happened.
Mind you, this man does not know Karmelo.
It was both of them, bro.
This man does not know Carmelo, as if it would have no reason to lie, aside from, I don't know, maybe the blind tribalism that we have seen displayed time and time again.
Austin, that dude that got unalive, and his brother,
Yep.
went over there to intentionally. It's not to the point that he brought a knife. For one, it wasn't on school property. The school is
wasn't on school property.
Okay, so apparently it was on school property. So I have no idea what this person is saying. But something else that someone brought up is that Carmelo Anthony had been suspended, apparently. Yeah, Valerie McGilvery, she says, when is anyone going to talk about the fact that Carmelo Anthony was suspended from school and he wasn't even allowed to be at that track meet? Yeah, it's just, yeah, and his supporters outside seem to be very happy to be hurling racial slurs. Here, More reporting from Savannah Hernandez. She's interviewing. Okay, if you can't see this because podcast, she's interviewing an African American lady here.
If evidence does come out that Karmelo was not in fact fighting for his life when he stabbed and killed Austin Medaf, do you think that the Black community will accept that?
If evidence shows that he did not, no, we're gonna stand by ours regardless. They stand by theirs.
What? We're gonna stand by ours regardless. They said no, that's not true, and it's funny. So, in response to white people or Asian or Hispanic people pointing out that it seems like Black people love defending Black criminals, some Black activists will just, here's a picture of like a white person who did something bad. You never have white people rallying around, white pedophiles or murderers or anything like that. No one's trying to do that. I mean, it's like, yeah, this was a person who broke the law, hurt people. Good. They should be in prison. So where this idea of like white tribalism comes from, white people just stand by theirs, that's purely imaginary. This is not actually what is happening. But they're like, these people live in a different reality. Let's just face it. They don't live in a reality that where Black people are simply poor because of white people, where violence against Black people, it's solely because of white people. These things are objectively wrong, but these people believe it with their lives.
We're going to stand by ours regardless. I'm a mother first. I'm a Black mother. Let me put that on there. I'm an African-American mother. So I have to put away my color first and step into the motherhood. Nobody wants to see their child slain. So I do want to send prayers to Austin Medaf, their family. But at the end of the day, I got to think like, okay, what did you do to them or whatever to cause this to happen, the reaction? We got to start taking accountability for our kids. Because then again,
the irony. We got to start taking accountability for our kids. Yeah, you do. Someone's kid just stabbed someone.
My kid, that's why it's a catch-22. If my kid was Karmelo and I feel like his back was up against the wall, well, I'm going to tell you straight up, better mine than yours. Better mine than yours. So either way it go, everybody loses. A Black boy allegedly murdered, and I say allegedly, heavy on the allegedly murdered somebody. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, this is about race. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't give a damn.
Who wouldn't give a damn?
The let me say this. Let's say the community.
So like if Carmelo Anthony was the one stabbed and killed by Austin Medaf,
they wouldn't give a damn.
I come out here every Thursday and we pray for people going to court because we know this is the final frontier of racism and it's legalized here.
It was announced yesterday that there's no Black jurors that were chosen. What are your thoughts on that?
That's why we need God. That's why we need God, and that's why he's going to show who's in control.
And would you be open to giving us your personal insights into the Carmelo Anthony trial and what your thoughts are on it?
I just want justice done. We know nobody go to a track meet to murder anybody. Okay, come on.
I mean, then kind of seems like that's what he did. Why did he have a knife on him? Right. And according to footage, because there is footage, and we've often heard people wondering why don't they just release the footage. So this whole interaction before Austin was stabbed lasted about 4 minutes. Not a long time. So what happens in 4 minutes that leads someone to supposedly be fearing for their life? Yeah, we have a meme here. This is in regard to Carmelo Anthony. Get a $500K GoFundMe for killing a white kid. Blow it all so you can't afford a lawyer. Your public defender gets you an all-white jury. Yeah, so apparently, despite having $500K plus, like it's more like $600K raised for GoFundMe, Carmelo Anthony is using a public defender, which are usually not the best lawyers. That's insane. Oh yeah, and as someone remarked on X, Dre Baldwin, Carmelo Anthony is a product of a two-parent home, went to school daily, played sports, and was on track to graduate high school, yet and still, he carried a knife and justified stabbing Austin Medaf with, he put his hands on me. This is cultural conditioning. And there have been photos released of Carmelo Anthony, basically looking like a thug, looking like someone who's really into gang culture. This stuff is poison. If you are a Black parent, I don't know what you are thinking, letting your kid listen to hip hop, be exposed to gang culture. Doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. This is toxic regardless. Jeff on Rumble, that man said it best. We all need God. Yeah, amen. But you shouldn't be turning to God once you're already like in the courtroom. You need God a lot earlier. Yeah, so we have, according to Savannah Hernandez, who's out there are threats being made from Carmelo Anthony supporters. Oh, yeah, and here we have someone basically just advocating Black people lie in jury selection about their biases so that they are able to participate. Ghanaian feminism. Black people are pissing me off. When you get on jury duty, you say you can follow the law and you say you can put Black people in jail. Then when you get on the jury, you don't. Common effing sense under white supremacy don't show racial solidarity publicly. This is the type of, this is what we're dealing with here. Yeah, it's a shame. So this trial is expected to last, I think they said 2 weeks. There's been testimony. I don't know if Carmelo Anthony is going to take the stand. Probably not, I would imagine. But I'm really curious to see whether they will release that footage. Apparently it's grainy and blurry, but I mean, it'll at least disprove whether a whole gang of people tried to jump Carmelo Anthony. Anyway, we'll be following this along as it happens. So stay tuned. And I think based on everything, it's pretty likely that Carmelo Anthony is going to be found guilty. And I would say good riddance. Pog Dog on Twitch. Soon they're going to recognize Savannah as right wing. Hope she stays safe. Yeah, Savannah Hernandez. I mean, she's fearless, but also if I were her, I would be careful because she's so much notoriety at this point. Definitely people are on the lookout for her sometimes. The Antifa people already know her. I don't know so much about these types of like BLM looking activists. But let's pivot now and discuss Jesse Ridgway. So Jesse Ridgway, I believe, is a YouTuber, some sort of influencer. He's married and he already has a child. He and his wife have kind of decided to make her pregnancy part of their content. You know, he shared ultrasounds, shared the pregnancy announcement. It was all cutie and like, oh, they're having a family. That's nice. However, they are now under fire because they decided to ultimately abort the child that they had been celebrating in their content. He released this post, which has now gone viral on X, 21 million views. He says, this week, my wife and I made the very difficult decision to terminate the pregnancy due to trisomy 21. The choice was not made lightly. We really appreciate all of the personal stories you guys shared with us, especially the unconditional support we received from fans with no matter what we decided. And I believe the way this happened is that they had, some the anatomy scan and testing done, and then they went through the results with their audience. So again, they were using this pregnancy for content. And so the audience knew that the child had been diagnosed with trisomy 21, which is not 100% accurate test, by the way. But he says, I know some of you may be very disappointed to hear this news. We are devastated. This has been extremely traumatic for both of us, especially Ashley. Not as traumatic as it's been for the child you murdered. I'll just say that, but let's continue. She went under the procedure earlier this week. By procedure, he means abortion. We're using all of these, nice ways to skirt around what it really was. She is on the mend. Thankfully, everything went smoothly, but emotionally we are drained. Oh, it's good to know that the murder of your child went smoothly. I'm happy for you. Good to hear it. Trisomy 21, also known as Down syndrome, is caused by an extra chromosome. It is caused by an error in cell division, like a glitch. The odds of a baby having it is 1 in 1,000. When I first confronted this news, I was shocked but optimistic. If they're a little slow intellectually, then we'll make it work. I signed on to be a parent, come what may, but I just didn't fully understand what Down syndrome entailed. And so he's going to basically now go into how difficult it would have been to have a Down syndrome child. And I want to be clear. Absolutely, 100%. Having a child with a disability is going to be more difficult than having a child without a disability. The question is, does that give you the right as parents to terminate the life of your child? There are organizations that would have taken the child. There are couples who may have adopted the child. Now that child will never have the chance, though, because you chose to take their life. He says, once we made it public, it became clear that most people don't know what Down syndrome entails, and no, it's not the same as autism. Yeah, obviously it's not the same. He says 50% of babies with DS have heart defects. 75% will have hearing challenges. Over 50% will have vision problems, impaired immune function, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, delayed physical development, poor muscle tone, structural issues with face, decreased lifespan, etc. Sadly, the list is long. Feel free to look it up. Down syndrome isn't a blessing. It is objectively shitty from a health perspective. Yes, having Down syndrome is not a good thing. No parent, given the choice, would elect for their child to have Down syndrome, 100%. And I don't think it's a bad thing to also discuss the challenges that people with Down syndrome face, as well as how that affects the family. I think all of those things are fine. And we should also be discussing things like care burnout, how we can support families who have family members with disabilities. That's fine. What we're not going to do, though, is try to use this to justify terminating your child, which is what this post is, because it's too much trouble, because it's too difficult. Yeah, the run line on Kick. Wait a second, there is a gigantic organization for Down syndrome. He's rationalizing murder his kid. Karasu 737, I would say it's inherently not right to take a baby's life. Of course, especially so these scans, I think this wasn't even one of those issues where they're taking the morning after pill or something and it's like an 8-week fetus. This was 20 weeks along. So that's like what, 5 months? That's I think the earliest baby born that survived was 20 some weeks. So this is a potentially viable child that they've chosen to terminate because of this disability. He also says the miscarriage risk is also close to 50%, which made matters worse. They may never see the light of day, and it puts Ashley further at risk. Miscarriage, don't try to make it seem like you were doing this for your wife's safety. You were doing this for convenience because you didn't want to have someone with Down syndrome in your family. The run line says on Kick, he's saying this and has millions of dollars. Exactly. That's the point that people have made. You have enough money. You live in a home with millions of dollars. You're very successful. You have enough money where you could afford round-the-clock care for your child if that's what it came to. But you elected instead to murder them. Yeah. He says we spoke with doctors, friends, family, and genetic counselors and learned that up to 90% of women terminate their pregnancy after learning the baby has trisomy 21. Yeah, I mean, it is a genocide of people with Down syndrome, 90% electing to murder their kid before they're ever born. And what's crazy is that there are people with Down syndrome who graduate high school. They have jobs. There have been activists with Down syndrome who have given impassioned pleas to please stop aborting them, that their lives are worth living. And yet still we have this type of rhetoric. I mean, it's just disgusting. He says, this was way higher than I expected. I thought it would be lower given that I hear so many say they kept or would keep the baby. I believe that's because most terminations happen privately. It feels shameful. A lot of judgment being cast. Yeah, it should feel shameful because it is shameful. And it's like, you made this decision. You did it. Now you're sharing it publicly. You have to accept that people aren't going to like this. And that's you could have kept it quiet. You didn't have to share the entire pregnancy. Use your kid as a prop until you found out that they might actually be more work than you thought. But you'll see this man then plays the victim. He says, to all of my fans who've waited on the topic, who have autism, Down syndrome, or any conditions, we appreciate you. You matter a lot, and we're glad you're here. I commend you and your families for having the strength and courage to push forward. But I would have killed you, is basically what he's saying here. I would have just aborted you. As for us, we made a difficult decision that we believe in the long run will be beneficial for our family. Thankfully, we have a choice. It was beneficial for your family to kill the part of your family that would have required a little bit more work. Yeah. It will take a little time to move on. Oh, a little time, only a little time. But we're excited to try again in the future and hopefully have a better outcome. We are excited that we were able to murder our kid, and hopefully next time they will be better. Love you guys, and thank you for understanding. Yeah. And so, he predictably has been ratioed many times in the responses. Absolutely horrible. This person says the fact that you thought it acceptable to even share this is weird. You're a monster. It's insane. Live Action, pro-life advocacy group, your child deserves so much more. Disabled children are just as valuable as able-bodied children. Killing children because of a diagnosis isn't just ableism, it's evil. Yeah, not getting a lot of support in the comments. But what was crazy is that after people pushed back, this individual decided that the best thing to do was play the victim. Karasu 737, they should not be allowed to normalize it. Plus, it will be used to justify any and all abortions. Exactly. Like, you did it. You had the choice to do it. But now that's not enough. You also want to be supported in that decision? No. Yeah. And the left claims to be against eugenics. That's right. This is literally eugenics. And it's not even like eugenics in the way like, oh, I want a smart spouse, so my child will be smart as well. You're just murdering undesirables. That's what you're doing. Like, let's not try to sugarcoat it at all. Oh, Fidget Guy Rumble Rant, thank you so much. He says, Jesus said, thou shalt not smite the seed of the woman, neither shalt thou slay it when born. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I don't think you should be able to kill your child because they have a disability, something wrong with them. And I also don't think that would be right if the child was born and then you decide that it's still too much work. You know, you decided to create a life. You have to respect that life. You don't just get to kill it, terminate it because it becomes inconvenient. If you don't want to raise it, that's a different issue. But you don't get to kill it. And that, I think, is what it, you know, hearing this type of language, he speaks as if it's like, oh, he bought a pair of shoes that didn't fit right. No, this was your child you were talking about. Fidget Guy, again, another Rumble Rat. Thank you. Enoch teaches us that fallen angels taught women to practice abortion or the smitings of the embryo in the womb. Book of Enoch, chapter 69. It is just evil. There's no other word for it. And this is his post that he made a few days after all of the backlash. He says, I've never seen such hate and vitriol for two people grieving the loss of their unborn child and making an impossible decision. Yeah, you're not just getting hate for grieving the loss of their unborn child. Let's be real. You ended that child's life. That's why you're getting hate. This isn't just a miscarriage that happened, an accident. This was the purposeful termination of your child's life for convenience. He says the last 24 hours have exposed a side of humanity that is deeply disturbing. Being called murderous pieces of shit, evil compared to Hitler, and receiving nonstop death threats. Oh no, did other people threaten to end your life? What a terrible thing to end someone's life. That's really heinous. I can't believe someone would say that to you. I can only imagine how difficult it must be to hear that someone wants to end your life. Oh, wait, hang on. Let's think for a second what it must be like for that to actually happen to you by your own parents in the womb. Oh, wait, that's exactly what your child went through because of you and your wife. And also, as people pointed out, this guy has a dog with kidney disease that apparently he's pouring a lot of time and resources into. So it's okay, like, we should do whatever it takes to keep the dog alive. But hang on, the child, your own child with a disability, well, he's disposable. He says, Jesse says, seeing my 6-year-old dog with stage 4 kidney disease be used as a weapon, manipulating my words and intent in a tweet, or saying we'll regret this decision forever and must repent to God is absolute insanity. Why? Why is it so crazy to think you might regret killing your child? If you ever wanted to marvel at the depravity of people online, just check the replies to my latest tweet. This is reflective of the current world and landscape we're all living in. So this man, he's incensed. He's so offended, again, by words, never mind what his actions were. What's more troubling is a lot of these people use God or Jesus as their justification for threatening us and wanting to cast us into hell. Seems pretty hypocritical. What? Like, oh, hang on. You think that just because I murdered someone, I'm going to hell? And you're against murder, yet you say things that are unkind to me? Seems pretty hypocritical. What? No. You are not the victim here. Other people who are condemning your actions, they are not the bad guys. See Warner 312 on Twitch, naive for them to announce they aborted their baby due to DS. That's exactly what so many people are saying. Like, it's okay. Okay, you did this. That's one thing. But also you chose to announce it in this very ill-advised post, and you're surprised at the backlash? This is just like, I don't know who told him this was a good idea, that he would just announce aborting their child as if it were, I don't know, announcing leaving a talent agency. And people would just move on? No. It's insane. Like, how out of touch are you? So many saying they would have kept the child, put it up for adoption, or are suddenly ready to adopt a Down syndrome child. That's great. You could do all those things. However, many of the people throwing stones don't even have children, let alone one with a condition, and most likely will never do the things they say they're going to do. Okay. I don't think you need to have a Down syndrome child to say that it's wrong to kill Down syndrome children. Call me crazy. There's been some heinous stuff said about my wife and I on some extremely large accounts. It baffles me that there are such trashy people with significant followings. If you can't contribute anything meaningful to the conversation aside from insults, then just don't post. They are trying to contribute. I think it's pretty meaningful to condemn murder. On the other hand, there's been tremendous stories of people who kept their Down syndrome baby, and that's awesome. Very courageous, and they do look very happy. That is your choice, and I support it. This was ours, and we can do that. It's very easy to accept the differences between us when it has no actual bearing on your life. But that's the thing. We're worried about the life of the kid. And obviously, a parent who has a Down syndrome child whom they love and is happy, they're going to take it pretty personally when you say, yeah, we murdered our kid for the same reason. How out of touch could this guy be? What shocked me most of all was that the story has suddenly become mainstream news. A couple's abortion is suddenly newsworthy in 2026. Yeah, and it should be. Look, you chose to share this all publicly. Hako Babber, hello from Turkey. Oh, hello. We do that thing now where we spell Turkey differently. I'm not sure if it is said differently, though. Hope I'm not mispronouncing it, though. Optimistic Realizer on Rumble. There's a very sad documentary on Netflix called Dropbox. A man from South Korea allows women to drop their Down syndrome babies to him rather than leave them somewhere. Oh, it's terrible. The run line on Kick. No, you made a choice to take a life away from the world who could have added art, music, love to at least one other person. C Warner 312 on Twitch. I heard a shocking statistic that 1/3 of Gen X's population was aborted. So I'm not sure that's meant to be Gen X or Gen Z, but it's insane. He says there are over 1 million abortions every single year for a myriad of reasons. And it is the most common outcome for trisomy 21, yet this blows up on, and people are surprised. Yeah, because it's awful. And I think it's like, no one really likes, or very few people actually like abortion. And so we can all kind of sweep it under the rug and not think of it safe, legal, rare, and all that. But when someone makes a post talking about how they killed their 20-week-old kid, who may have been just like a few weeks away from being viable because they were disabled, yeah, rightfully people are going to be upset about that. He says, this is exactly why I wanted to share the story. People still need to see vulnerability and hear the raw truth. There's real suffering going on and is being done in silence and fear. Yeah, you should be afraid to kill someone. That's actually reasonable. So many mothers have reached out privately commending us on our bravery to speak truthfully about this topic, and we really appreciate that support. We want you to feel less alone and less ashamed. There's never been a more important time to speak up and about the things that matter. It's just like the lack of introspection. It's staggering. But hey, at least we are talking about this again. The idea that some people do think of like their own children so trivially. As a mother, I don't know how you make that decision. Pogdog on Twitch, we went from safe, legal, and rare to just legal. Yeah. Shocking stuff. Yeah, and you could see on his timeline, like he posted videos. Yeah, the results of our amniocentesis came back. So he was absolutely using this little baby for clout. We may lose the baby. I mean, it's just disgusting stuff. Yeah, he was gender reveal this week. Baby Juggy. Oh, so it went from baby Juggy to, I guess, just an inconvenient fetus that you don't care about. Yeah, first look at Little Nugget. It's just like, it's just grim seeing the way that they were talking. Like, obviously they know this is a baby, this is just a clump of cells, but then because of Down syndrome, the murder is just justified. Anyway, makes me sick. It's disappointing stuff, but yeah, I applaud all the parents who are sharing their babies who have Down syndrome or their kids, and showing that, yeah, their lives are still worth living. Just because you have a disability doesn't mean that your life is just forfeit. What is this couple going to do if one of their previously healthy kids then does end up getting disabled for whatever reason? Because it can happen. Are they going to love them less now that they are disabled than when they were, perfectly healthy? Are they going to give them up for adoption because they're no longer perfect and it's just too much trouble? Insane. Axel Foley, I liked Keith Wood's take on it. So Keith Woods had a take where he was sharing like these struggles and difficulties surrounding having a Down syndrome kid. I think that's, like I said, we should talk about that 100%. We should talk about the difficulties, how we can help parents do this, caregiver burnout. It's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. But I think you go too far when you say, so we should probably just kill them. I think that's a pretty big line to cross. Seductive Rue 6 on Twitch. I didn't know you streamed on Twitch. It hasn't been going on very long, but yes, I do stream on Twitch now. Pogdog on Twitch. If that clump of cells was found on Mars, it would redefine the universe 100%. But yeah, very grim stories, this show. I'm sorry. This has been somewhat bleak. But let's pivot a little bit. Not necessarily good news, but at least different news. Let's talk about what's happening in LA. So Tuesday, LA voters went to the polls, kind of like their primary. If one of the candidates for mayor between Karen Bass, Spencer Pratt, and Nithia Ramen had gotten more than 50% of the vote there and then, I think they just would have been mayor. But basically everyone was expecting it would go to a runoff election in November, that no one would get more than 50%. But it seemed pretty slam dunk on Wednesday when we streamed that Spencer Pratt would be moving forward. However, things have changed now. And it's now looking like Nithia Ramen is going to be advancing instead of Spencer Pratt, because all of these late, mail-in ballots that are coming in suspiciously disproportionately going for Nithia Ramen. Some, like, not at all. No batches, or sorry, in some batches, none, period, going to Spencer Pratt. So it says, in the Los Angeles mayoral primary, Bass holds 35% of the vote with 62% counted, blah, blah, blah. But about 322,000 mail-in ballots remain amid California's slow counting process. Bass faces criticism on homelessness, blah, blah, blah. Pratt surged on public safety after losing his home in the 2025 Palisades fire. Ramen has gained in late mail votes, fueling uncertainty reflected in shifting betting markets. So yeah, people are basically accusing California, LA specifically, of voting now. It's suspicious, if you ask me. Someone named Useless Tree posts on X, if the remaining 38% of votes cast for the LA mayor are all allocated at the same proportion as the last batch that came in, Nithia Ramen will come to within 100 votes of Spencer Pratt. This is so precise that it appears those doing the counting know the rate at which they need to proportion the votes to eliminate Pratt. And so, yeah, on the prediction markets, now Nithia Ramen is leading over Spencer Pratt. Spencer Pratt is not expected to proceed to the runoff election. Yeah, future Moldovan citizen fan, he says, it's both conceivable and plausible that a Democrat has never legitimately won an election in this country. Like, I wish that were just an exaggeration, but it's pretty crazy. Yeah, and so they are also, like, there were also primaries for the governor race as well. California is saying it may take weeks to count all of this. Ron DeSantis has come out hard slamming California because Florida gets all their votes counted in like a day. So the fact that, even like one city's, you're not able to determine for weeks, it's crazy. See Warner 312, Twitch, the fact that they count ballots for 3 weeks after election night tells us all we need to know. Yeah, basically. Shady as hell. Red Eagle Update says, can someone explain to me why it takes California weeks to count election results when Florida can do it in a few hours? There's no reason. There's no reason aside from corruption and basically just cheating why it would take California so long. Yeah. DeSantis has said Florida processes more than 10 million votes in a matter of hours. California takes days or sometimes even weeks to count the votes. It's pathetic and it's corrosive to our civic culture. I mean, I just don't know anybody who buys this at this point. It's just it's pretty transparent. Like who at this point would have trust in LA's election system? People have also asked Grok, looking at the statistical probability. Wall Street Apes, according to artificial intelligence, the statistical probability of Spencer Pratt getting 0 out of 24,000 votes in last night's late night Los Angeles ballot drop is 1 in trillions. Kind of seems like cheating. Yeah, C3 on X, Spencer Pratt got 0 out of 24,000 votes in a late night LA ballot drop. 0 out of 24,000. A guy getting around 30% support got 0 out of 24,000. Astronomically small probability of happening. Impossible. California no longer even hides it. And wokeness, he also mentioned this morning, California was at 58% counted, and then 15 hours later, it's now at 56% counted. Really weird. They went backwards. So what on earth is happening? I mean, if I were Spencer Pratt's team, I'd be looking into getting a recount, anything, because this is funny business. I do not trust this one single bit. Jacob, of course he's going to win. On Twitch, he says they wouldn't push his name if he wasn't going to be in office. I think a lot of people don't want Spencer Pratt to win. I mean, there's a lot of corruption in LA, and I think Spencer Pratt is threatening to end that. There's a lot of money going missing in the nightmare of like bureaucracy and NGOs. Spencer Pratt is talking like he's going to try to clean that up. I think the gravy train is ending for a lot of people if Pratt gets into office. So of course there's going to be an effort to stop that from happening. Seductive Ruse 6 on Twitch. They'll continue counting as long as it takes to find the votes for Nithia. Basically. Net Skyline 5 on Kick says both sides use tactics. Yeah, but people have pointed out, can you remember a time where late night ballot drops have overwhelmingly favored Republicans? I'm having trouble coming up with an example of that. I don't know. Hussy Piss Groiper on Kick. I think California is finished. That's why so many gave up and left. Honestly, California could be so great. We've talked about this. There's so much good in California, but it seems like either the voters are just retarded at this point, or there's so much corruption, the Democrats are never going to give it up. Unfortunate. But let's talk about trad wives now. So trad wives, they've basically become an internet phenomenon. You know, the women who are conservative, Christian, religious, they bake their own sourdough bread at home. They embrace traditional gender roles. Yes, but it's almost like they go beyond just being conservative. We're talking about trying to emulate 1950s housewife type of thing. A lot of people have kind of, as an insult, labeled me trad. I'm not. I've never claimed to be trad. I don't know why anyone would. Like, basically, if you're a woman on the internet and you're kind of right-wing and Christian, people will accuse you of trying to be trad. I'm not trad. And the reason why I'm not trad is because if I look at what trad online culture has become, it really has kind of zeroed in on specifically 1950s housewife culture, which, I mean, I didn't grow up in America or the West, period. So what looks traditional to me is not going to be 1950s nuclear family suburbia, right? If you look at, trad culture in the 1950s, this is a period in time where the extended family is being kind of like put to the wayside, especially as like young American families are being encouraged to be more mobile. They can move for things like job opportunities. So I'm not trad. Just want to put that out there. And here we have this Telegraph article now. who asks, who states, trad wives are a myth as women always worked. Sex differences are real, but there is nothing feminine about staying home. And so this is interesting because, yeah, part of the trad life movement is very much women not working, staying in the home, being full-time stay-at-home moms. That's a good thing if you ask me. But there's also, I find a lot of these trad accounts, they don't like the idea of women working even on social media. There are some like quote trad wife accounts that they're being called not trad because they're on social media. And in a way, it becomes kind of like a purity spiral a lot of the time. But I think it is accurate to point out that, yes, historically speaking, women have always worked. Now, does that mean they've always worked outside of the home while pushing their kids into daycare? No. Different cultures across time. Yeah, a woman needs to be able to contribute to the household, but the kid is staying with them while they're, doing whatever it may be, businesses in the home, a family business where everyone pitches in. That to me is trad. That's actually traditional. Family businesses, wife, husband, kids, they're all in on it. Especially like in Chinese culture, that's very common. If you think of the Chinese restaurant run by like an actual Chinese person, that's still the model that's going on. I support that. The idea that a woman will just stay at home and, not be expected to contribute financially, that is something that is, I think, like uniquely American. Inevitable China. Speaking of the trad movement, did you see Lauren Southern on Piers Morgan recently? No, I didn't. Okay, maybe let's look that up after we go through this article. K.G95 on Kick. Women have always worked, but not to the extent it is in society now. 100%. And so that's the problem that I have with the modern setup, where women, they work to the point where they can't even raise their children, right? They are leaving, in some cases, their kids at daycare from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. And their kid is being raised by strangers. That is not how the family should function. That is dysfunctional. I think that is cruel to the kids who have to go through that. That is absolutely something that needs to change. But, the idea that we could have, and, there are so many families who talk about what it takes for them to be able to remove their wife from contributing economically. It should be easier to raise a family on a single income. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm not trad. I'm not a part of that, but let's see what this article has to say. The premise behind trad wife culture is a myth. An evolutionary psychologist has warned. Dr. Stuart Williams, an expert in the field of nature versus nurture, said that women have always worked, and the idea that historically they stayed at home raising the children and cooking was inaccurate. The trad wife or traditional wife trend has spread through social media and promotes a lifestyle in which the husband is the sole financial provider, leader, and protector, while the woman is dependent and submissive. The phenomenon is perpetuated by influencers who show off their homemaking and parenting skills in glossy online videos. It is supposed to be based on historical gender roles, which proponents claim have been lost in modern life. So there is something. Another reason why I'm also not trad is because I'm a pragmatist above all else, which is like Chinese culture is very pragmatic. I've read stories about, a man gets laid off, but the wife is making good money. And so he stays at home for a period while the wife works. And I think that's fine. Like, do whatever you got to do to make your family work and to support each other is my philosophy when you have a family. And I think gender roles, they work best because they're descriptive, not necessarily prescriptive. If the wife, if she's the one that has a job right now, because the husband has, it's going through whatever, but you're going to tell the wife, like, no, you need to quit now because you're a woman. Like, that to me is insane. Do whatever you need to do to take care of your family. Steve Bennett, daycare is anti-Western. Daycare is it's anti-child, it's anti-family. Yeah, we're gonna look up the Lauren Southern thing. We will. I'm interested to see that. Apparently she was on with Andrew Wilson, people are saying. So it says Dr. Stewart Dr. Stuart Williams of the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, whose book A Billion Years of Sex Differences is published on June 4th, said there was little evidence to support the phenomenon. The idea that this is the natural arrangement for our species, I think, very, very weak, he explained. For most of our evolutionary history, women weren't just at home with the kids. They had jobs outside the home, gathering food and the like. For most of evolutionary history, women were not isolated. They were hanging out with other adults for most of the day with the kids. Yeah, this guy is right. So yeah, women were out gathering, like literally picking the berries, but they had their kids with them. The baby was strapped on, and other women were also around, and we were all kind of looking after the babies, the kids together. That is way more traditional than like this housewife that's isolated from her community, from her extended family, and is only expected to just stay in the home and cook and clean. Optimistic Realizer on Rumble says, I could be wrong, but the Chinese culture pushes communism, so they are probably pushing feminism too. Chinese culture currently is quite egalitarian. Historically, not a thing, but Chinese culture really places a big focus on family. And so there's a pragmatism to Chinese families that it's like literally everybody pitch in all the time, do what you got to do. If a kid needs to stay at home throughout college years because it's cheaper and we save money, that's how we're going to do it. And I think there's an atomization that happened in the West starting in the 1950s where, families were moving away from each other. Kids were being kicked out of the house at 18 that I think eroded some of the bonds that should exist between family members. And I don't think the West has ever really recovered for it. See, Warner 312, back in that time, kids were working at 4 or 5 years old in the field. Everybody was working. 100% that's true. I mean, it would be considered a total luxury to have not only your wife not working, but also your kids not working from a historical standpoint. Because yeah, back in the old days, it's like everybody has got to pull their weight. Dr. Stuart Williams said he accepted that men and women naturally gravitate toward different types of work, with women often preferring people or language-focused roles, such as psychology, the humanities, teaching, and caring professions. Conversely, fields that are less people-oriented, such as computer science, physics, and mathematics, tend to naturally remain male-dominated. Yeah, obviously. As societies become more developed and women gain more rights and opportunities, the gender divide in careers becomes greater, not less, a phenomenon known as the gender equality paradox. This is 100% true. Scandinavian economies are a good example of this. They obviously are gender equal, but things like STEM and early childhood education, those are even more like gender segregated. For a lot of sex differences, he says you'd expect them to be smaller in gender equal nations, wealthier nations, nations with higher levels of human development, but instead they are often larger. Yeah, that's not a surprise. He warned that because the sexes have different average interests, trying to force a strict 50-50 gender balance in every occupation is unnatural. Yeah, obviously. I mean, this guy, I'm curious about this book now. But yeah, I mean, people have tried to criticize the trad movement, which I don't have a problem with. But oftentimes they're criticizing it because they just do hate tradition and they are feminist, which is different than criticizing it because, it's unrealistic, because in some ways it might be anti-family if you're putting these unrealistic expectations on couples where your wife can't work, only the guy is able to provide, that type of thing. Av 3103, the traditional sense is that work is elective for females but mandatory for men generally. Seems to be pragmatic that men should be protectors and providers. I don't think the traditional sense has work elective for anybody, though. Not women, frankly, not even kids. Hussy Piss Groiper on Kick, your view on this isn't just Chinese. I think it applies to a lot of different Asians. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is like very, very accurate. But let's look at Lauren Southern. Let's see if we can find Lauren Southern on Pierce Morgan. Okay, here we have a clip. Let's look at it.
Specifically, who are making these advocations that a mom who has children at home can't have a part-time job, but rather, hey, it's probably good to avoid babysitting fees, things like this, to have one parent who stays at home, one parent who works, if it's possible, to prioritize their children. That seems completely rational, reasonable to me. Who's advocating this throwback to the 1950s specifically?
I mean, there are some people, like very niche accounts, but I think Andrew Wilson is right. There's a broader conversation in the conservative sphere that's basically just, hey, we shouldn't be raising our kids in daycare. And saying just that does not make you trad. And actually, Andrew Wilson's wife, Rachel, I'm a huge fan of hers. I have her book. She signed it for me too, about like, occult feminism. But she has said as well, like she doesn't identify as trad either. What does that mean? But we were just simply talking about basically not outsourcing parenting.
I think that's great that you don't have these views, Andrew. And I would agree with you that the average normal traditionalist living in the real world does not possess these beliefs.
That's not
but the
answering my
LARPers
question.
online, I'm about to answer your question. As Piers noted, the LARPers online, like Andrew Tate, the people who are posting Norman Rockwell photos,
He's not a
saying
traditionalist.
Yeah, Andrew Tate is not a traditionalist. I mean, he basically advocates for harems of women. Don't even marry them, just like impregnate women and have them. Like, so this is not traditional in any sense. Andrew Tate, he's his own thing. See Warner 312 on Twitch. Both parents working full-time careers definitely comes at the cost of the kids. Yes. And it's just, I saw a video of this woman who was like a CEO or something. She posted about how she only has 1 hour with her kid after she gets back from work before the kid goes to sleep. But she says, oh, but I'm really present during that 1 hour. And it's like, you will never get that time back. Babies don't keep. Like, I don't, and this was, to be clear, this was a woman who chose to work. She made that very clear in her comments that she didn't want to give up her career. And I do judge you for that. If you're a woman, 100%. And I know that there are a lot of women who have to work, who no judgment there. Do what you got to do. Life isn't easy. I understand that. But to those women specifically who are prioritizing their jobs over their kids, you are going to regret that 100%. You're not going to be laying on your deathbed and be like, oh, thank goodness I did all those Zoom meetings. I was so productive. I increased shareholder value. No, nothing is more important than your family, than your children. And, it just pains me that there are kids whose moms are open about the fact that they would rather be at an office than playing with them all day. I just can't, I can't imagine that. Av 3103, having harems is traditional for the elite 1%, not the average man. And that's the thing. So harems are very anti-male. And I'm not being facetious. Harems are actually one of the worst things you can do for men in society, because think about the sex ratio, okay? If one guy, the richest guy, is getting 5 to 10 women, what's happening to all the other men, right? And we see this, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints in Utah, the extremist Mormon groups. But because they have polygamy, one man with many wives, they end up having to send out young boys just to fend for themselves because they can't stay in the community. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able, the people in charge wouldn't be able to continue their dominance of having so many wives. So it's disenfranchising other men for people like Andrew Tate to have all of these women. It contributes greatly to societal instability to have men who basically have no prospect of finding a wife. You think the dating market is bad now in a society that openly embraces polygamy and harems for men, where the rich men can just openly and institutionally have 10 wives? It's not better for guys. Fallen Radiant, do you feel that it is as bad as a situation if the children get to be with family, i.e. grandparents and cousins, while parents work? I actually think that's not as bad as, ideally, number one, it's the parents, but I'm lucky right now. My kids are with my mom. I wouldn't be able to do what I do unless I had my family. And that's why I'm so sympathetic to parents who don't have their family around. Because I actually think it's really good for both grandparents and their kids, and grandkids, to have bonds together. And historically speaking, that is also a big difference. Grandparents were way more involved in raising kids than they are today. I hear from people my age all the time that they have boomer grandparents, their parents, who they would love to have be more invested in their kids, help out more. And they remember when they were younger, their grandparents were helping out, but their boomer parents aren't interested. That's an actual problem. Yeah, exactly. And sorry, falling radiant 100%. Your whole extended family becomes closer as a result of it. That to me is like the ideal setting. You have involved grandparents and cousins, and you can all kind of share the burdens of, I love kids, but childcare is work. It does take time. And when you're able to, have family more involved, that means you're not shuttling them off to be institutionalized by daycare workers who don't care, who might be abusive, whatever it is. I also understand not all people have family nearby. But I think that's one of the ways that, we've contributed societally to a decline in the birth rate is by having us be more atomized. We're not close with our parents anymore. These are the people that should be helping us out. Sorry, I'm rambling. Let's continue with Lauren Southern.
Come on.
He's LARPing, as I've been LARPing.
He's not LARPing as a traditionalist either.
When 10 years ago, I had to make a video explaining why I wasn't married because I was getting so much pressure in my comments section saying, why aren't you married at 21 years old, Lauren? This is not a random phenomenon that I'm making up. You can go watch it. It has over 1 million views because there was so much curiosity in why I wasn't married at that age because I was a part of this right-wing community and not all of it's bad. But there's a lot of LARPers. I'm not giving you names. Who
are the names of these people specifically? The name one.
I'm saying they're LARPers. They're LARPers, like Andrew Tate.
Who is the LARPer? Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist. Who are the traditionalists specifically who are advocating these things? I think you built an entire
You don't think there's anyone online that's advocating.
Name them.
Okay. When I grew up, I listened to Prager University, which said you shouldn't go to university. You shouldn't. You should get married younger. You shouldn't bother getting educated. These are all, I just said Prager University videos that I watched when I was younger in the right wing.
Okay, so I do have a Prager University video that I did that I think was about marriage, dating to marry, but I definitely didn't encourage, I don't even know what Lauren's kind of like referring to there, but I didn't encourage people getting married without knowing their spouse, without vetting their spouse. I didn't encourage people not pursuing an education. So I feel like Lauren's not making this up. There are accounts on there that if you're a woman in college, they will be like, blah, 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 which I advocate for the MRS degree. I think if you're a woman, going to college to meet a spouse is a great place. But in any case, there are accounts that say stuff like that. But I think that they're often conflated with people like Dennis Prager, who's just a traditional conservative instead of like this trad life LARPy thing. I think those accounts tend to be nameless and faceless. They are more extreme, but they're also much less influential.
University. Who?
Dennis Prager himself.
Dennis Prager himself not make an advocation to go back to the 1950s. Ridiculous.
The idea that there isn't a general sentiment that you shouldn't go to university, that you should get married young, that women should be at home having babies on the right is just the most absurd thing I've ever seen. You can look at like the redheaded libertarian and all these people saying women shouldn't vote. If you watch a Timcast episode, there's plenty of influencers on there saying we need to go back. We need to return to tradition. Name. I can't believe you're even I've named like 4 people here.
Who? Name one.
I just said redheaded libertarian when she goes on Timcast. She's talking all about how women shouldn't vote.
Redheaded libertarian may think that the 19th Amendment needs to be repealed for external reasons. I don't know exactly what her reasons would be, but that would have nothing to do.
Yeah, and she's a redheaded libertarian is not trad. She's a libertarian, so she doesn't believe that like votes equal democracy equals freedom because she's right about that. But she's not I don't think she advocates for return to 1950. She does make amazing pies, a literal prize-winning woman. But, I think there's a conflation here of like wanting more present mothers versus like, let's literally go back to
these
the
people
50s.
either.
That would
but
have
the idea
nothing-
that there isn't this
Lauren,
advocacy going on the
Lauren.
internet is absurd.
That has nothing to do with the position that these are traditionalists who are saying we need to move back to the 1950s and wives can't work, and that's ridiculous. I've never heard this inside of any of these circles.
You've
Most
never heard the
traditionalists-
argument. You've never heard the argument that, hey, women coming into the workforce ruin society. We need to repeal the 19th. We need to get rid of.
No, these are mass oversimplifications.
You've never
Here's
heard
what
this
I
on the
hear.
internet.
I mean, I like Andrew Wilson's stuff. I know his style is gruff. He could put off people. But the more that I've watched of him, like I appreciate a lot of his. I don't think he's an extremist or anything like that. Is this a different? Wait, that's the same clip. Let's go to this one.
Conservative media space, thinking that it was something that it wasn't. And I lived a life that wasn't traditional. I lived a life that wasn't preparing me for a real marriage. It was a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the conservative space. But that's something I learned along the way, is that a lot of this is performative, as well as the trad life stuff you see online. I went, and when I was married, it was not a healthy situation, but I was sitting and posting on Instagram pies that I was baking, saying I've never been happier, because that's...
Not even Menaka on cake. Lauren, read the chat or else I'll storm the Capitol. Please, no storming of the Capitol. Fallen Radiant, in response to Andrew Wilson on Twitch, I really didn't like how he interacted when he was on your show years ago. It felt like he was talking down to you. Yeah, I think that's kind of when I don't think he wasn't what I expected, and I don't think I was fully what he expected. But I have no beef with him. You know, we're good. Like I said, I've been a fan of his wife's for a long time. I enjoy his content too. So I don't have any beef there. I know we had a discussion about kind of like marriage and the red pill. And we ended up having a trending topic on Twitter because he basically said that, you know, Christians shouldn't recognize non-Christian marriages. And, you know, we kind of talked about like what even is a marriage. And I think he makes a good point that for Christians and non-Christians, marriage is not the same thing. But anyway, it kicked off this huge debate whether, you know, marriage is something God gives to even non-Christians as a common grace. It's a whole topic. Lesbian Futanari girl, are you a Japanese girl? No, I am not. I am half Chinese, though. Optimistic realizer, there are conservative women that push to end the 19th Amendment too. Yeah, but I don't think that's the same thing as wanting to send people back to the 1950s. Because when I think of the push to remove the 19th Amendment, it's addressing the issue that universal suffrage is an ultimate good. And really, it was with the 19th Amendment more so than extending the franchise, for example, to Black males. It was the 19th Amendment that really solidified in Western consciousness that everybody should have the right to vote, that it must be universal voting rights or else there's oppression. And what that's done, I think, ultimately is pave the way for politicians being able to essentially buy votes through things like giving out welfare. And the founding fathers didn't support that, by the way. They were not in favor of just pure democracy. It's mob rule. It's not freedom for the 51% of population to vote to, you know, take assets away from the 49%. And so, yeah, the 19th Amendment, it's symbolic of everything that basically Western countries have descended into, appealing to the lowest common denominator, people who have absolutely no stake in the system, who are nothing but takers on the system, getting to decide who controls the system. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. I'm kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen Starship Troopers, but service guaranteeing citizenship is something that I'm a fan of. You know, you have to have some, even if you're, I think people say like you need to be a net taxpayer. Maybe that should be the requirement for voting. I think, you know, there's something to be said there. But I also think that if you're someone who's not wealthy, there are other ways you could be giving to society, like, you know, military service, where you should also be able to weigh in on things. Karasu 737, male property owners only. Well, see, that type of thing now, if you say that, you're going to be called a radical. But historically, that was actually kind of how things worked. Also, I mean, one vote per household. Heard people say that as well. Okay, but let's watch a little bit more.
What I wanted reality to be, and that's how I wanted other people to think about me. And I think we forget that people are doing this on a political level as well. We know everyone's editing their photos on Instagram. We know everyone's doing certain poses to look a certain way, but people are politically posing themselves to be of ideological sects, whether it be Christian, because you get a lot of money and accolades for doing that, or, a communist, and they're not living these ways. They're living in mansions. If they're an activist for Greenpeace, they're flying in private jets. This is just another aspect of that is going on in the right-wing sphere, is the trad life LARPing. And I did that. I was essentially, not intentionally, I was lying to my audience about what reality was, because that's what I wanted it to be, because I didn't want to be a proof of concept gone wrong for the ideology I'd promoted for 10 plus years and essentially ruined my life for, got banned from countries for, arrested, questioned under the Terrorism Act. I didn't want me to be a proof of concept gone wrong, the same as detransitioners get kicked out of the left because they're proof of concept gone.
So I don't know if you guys have been following Lauren Southern's like more recent stuff, but it kind of seems like she's now talking a lot about how, her time as a right-wing influencer, it was very performative. And a lot of the people that you see online who are preaching these things, preaching Christianity, preaching the trad life, they're very different off camera. And I think, Lauren's own experience kind of feeds into that as well. And I'm not going to sugarcoat things. There are people in the conservative media movement who do that. It's performative. It's not real. They don't take their faith seriously. They're not actually trad. They're not living these like Christian lifestyles. However, I do think that Lauren also had a very specific experience with her career, and that, when she talks about how everything's performative, it's not reflective of everyone in media. And I'm sorry that, she felt that pursuing the trad life was such a letdown for her. Of course, it's not a good thing. But, if I think about some of the people that I met working, at Blaze, a lot of the people at Daily Wire, if you don't like them, there are plenty of people in right-wing media who are actually everything that they purport to be. Allie Beth Stuckey, Liz Wheeler, these are women who I don't think they're trad. They, work, they're on social media. Basically, by that definition alone, they're not trad. But these are women who are mothers. They are committed, devoted Christians. A lot of the Daily Wire hosts like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh, again, committed Christians, fathers, and say what you want about, a lot of these people. These are also people who don't have any personal scandal. And I feel like, when we think of people like, oh, well, you have like Elijah Schaffer, Sarah Stock, the reason why their scandals get so much news is because most of the commentary, doesn't have those types of scandals. That's why it's such big news. So I'm not saying that Lauren's experience of finding out so many people are just performing a role for social media, I'm not saying that's inaccurate, but that's not everybody. Sniper Hang on Rumble asked Brett Cooper. Yeah, Brett Cooper, she's married. She got married young. She has a baby now, a husband. She lives on like a farm. I feel like this is in a sense projection, just because not everybody is living up to that standard. That doesn't mean that it's purely performative.
Gone wrong, right? We ignore the people who fail these things because we want simple solutions and ideologies that always work, but that is not real life.
I read your book, at least most of it, and I watched your interview with Jeremy Boring.
Thank you.
Most of these things that are going on with you are because of you. Now, people have completely radically different experiences than you had. And just pointing out that like, oh, the manosphere is a problem, Christian ethicists are a problem, things like this. But you can't even tell me specifically who. Like Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist, and he's not a traditionalist. So I don't even know why you brought him up.
I agree.
So who?
Here's brought him up, but I'm saying it's people LARPing as wanting to return to tradition. It's people LARPing as wanting to save the West. This is my issue, is the LARP that is going on online. Myron Gaines, we're going to fix society by taking away women's rights. I think that it's akin to the people saying...
I also don't think Myron Gaines is a traditionalist, and I might be streaming with him soon, by the way. I know you guys, he's one of the people you guys have asked for a collab with. We might do a stream about Chud at some point. Actually, I should reach out to him. But I don't think Myron Gaines calls himself a traditionalist either. Just because you're not a feminist, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily a traditionalist. And also, like, from a religious standpoint, Myron has a Muslim background as well. So I think, same with Andrew Tate, conflating like Christian versus Muslim traditions, I think would be a mistake.
Defund the police. Not only is this just not going to happen unless society falls apart, it's like fantasy football ideologically. And I'm not sitting here and pretending I have a perfect life by any stretch. If you read my book, you'll know most of it is an analysis of my own poor thinking and poor decision making.
Wait, I wanted to hear what Piers Morgan had to say.
Traditionalists specifically who are making these advocations that a mom who has children at home can't have a part. Who is the LARPer? Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist. Who are the traditionalists specifically who are advocating these things?
Okay, do we want to move on to talking about, I have a little segment on Black versus Asian people, or do we want to look at the Piers Morgan with Lauren Southern more? I will let the chat decide. Yes, move on. Hussy Piss Groiper, he is not a fan of this current. Inevitable China, Lauren, you should go on Piers. So I have been on Piers Morgan before. I've been on discussing, I think, something like with the trans issue, but I mentioned this previously. He has blocked me because I think I wasn't blocked before, but I think it's because I wrote a piece criticizing his position that the UK does have free speech because you can criticize Keir Starmer. I think it was well written, but apparently Pierce did not agree. Not even Minoka. We want to hear about Carmelo Anthony. Well, we kind of already covered Carmelo Anthony, but here, this actually kind of features partly with the Carmelo Anthony thing. So what's really frustrating is the level of tribalism that comes out when we have stories like Carmelo Anthony or Rick Chow. Because now what's happening, in case you didn't know, is that Black people on social media, and I know BLM is kind of dead. No one calls it that anymore, but I don't just want to say, oh, it's Black people or just Black activists, because these are a very specific group. So I don't know what else to call them aside from like BLM activists. But they make it into a tribal thing where it's not just Rick Chow versus Cyrus Carmack Belton. It's white Black people versus Asian people. Same thing with Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. It's not just Carmelo Anthony stabbed this one kid. No, it's a Black boy being persecuted by white people. And that's really frustrating. And so now, basically, online, when the Rick Chow thing specifically, there are Black people who are declaring war, it seems, on the Asian community, which is pretty crazy because if you already think about it, there are hate crimes happening against Asian people at the hands of Black people all the time, especially like in places like New York, San Francisco. Asian stores get robbed by Black criminals. So I don't know what like war, if we were not already there, would look like. It kind of seems like Asians are already being targeted. But yeah, there are activists who are so incensed that Rick Chow defended himself after Cyrus Carmack Belton pulled out a gun that they're literally saying that they're done with the Asian community, as if like what was there goodwill before that? Because I feel like as someone who's on the internet, I'll say it, like 90% of the time when I'm called a chink, when I'm called a gook, when I'm told I eat dogs, when I'm called an Uncle Chan, when I'm called white worshiping, it's by Black people. It's not by white people. It's not by racist right-wingers who, yeah, they exist, they're around, but most of the anti-Asian hatred, the racism, comes from Black people. And I think it's true for like the anti-white racism as well, disproportionately Black people. So I don't know. It's just like, it's interesting. You're saying now you've had it with Asians. Like, what were we getting special treatment before that I just didn't notice?
Y'all owed us, Asian community. Y'all owed us big time, bro. That's y'all mans, bro. That's y'all mans. Y'all seen the trial. Y'all seen what happened, man.
Yeah, so the Asians owe Black people because of this one thing. How about all of the Asian people who have been beaten, robbed, and murdered by Black people? did they not matter? Like if we're keeping score, which I don't even think it's necessarily a good thing to do, but if this guy wants to keep score, let the record show the grievances against Asians are way, way more numerous. And it's like people who were complaining about like, oh yeah, it's the Asians. They target black people. The only other example they could find was this case that happened in like the 90s. So over 30 years ago. Whereas, I mean, it seems like you can't scroll social media without seeing that some like poor Asian shopkeeper or elderly person was mugged or beaten or just killed.
Killed that 14-year-old boy in cold blood. Yeah. Yeah, y'all Asian comrade, whoever the fuck he is. Y'all got to take care of that business, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. Y'all gotta take care of that business, bro. Hey, listen, I'm preaching unity. I'm trying to bring us together for sure, bro. But one thing is for sure, man. This whole country, the world know that man killed that man in cold blood. And we all know why they let his killer off. We know why. Real talk. So it's like this, man. I'm sorry that it gotta come to this, but Asian community, y'all gotta handle y'all business, bro. So from this point on, hey, listen, this is some real shit. All the black community, the whole black community. Ain't no way y'all should be going to any Asian store spending any type of money with them. No nail techs, no hair stores, none of that, man. That's what I'm saying. You got to start standing for something, people. You got to stand for something. He just killed a 14-year-old boy in cold blood. Asian community, take care of y'all business, man. Take care of y'all business.
Asian community, take care of your business. How about you take care of your business? How about, all of the times that Rick Chow, who shot Cyrus Carmack Belton, all the times that his store had been vandalized, he had been assaulted, where was the outrage of the black community for him? Where was the effort to take care of your own? Non-existent. Doesn't exist. And this is what I think is so frustrating right now for a lot of people who like look at the reaction to things like the Rick Chow case or blah blah blah. It's that, there's racial solidarity on behalf of black people when one of their own is wronged, but there's no concern collectively for when black people commit crimes, which is like, and they justify it. And so I was thinking about this the other day. The Muslim community gets a lot of flack for not condemning enough when Muslim individuals commit terrorist attacks, right? There's a lot of people say like, oh, that doesn't have to do with me. I don't support it, but they don't like necessarily make a big show out of condemning it, which is like, yeah, we could talk about how they could do more to ensure that, their fellow believers know that this is not how you should be practicing Islam. But they don't really justify the crimes in the same way the black community does. Does that make sense? Right? Like when there's a Muslim terrorist attack, Muslims don't come out and disavow the person to the extent that a lot of people think they should. But it's pretty rare to see Muslims en masse saying, oh, well, he didn't do anything wrong. This is just racism. Like that doesn't really happen as much. But with the black community, it's like not only do they not disavow black crime, but as we saw with Cyrus Carmack Belton and as we are seeing with Carmelo Anthony, they actually go further and they justify it, which is pretty interesting, I think. Yeah. Perkunas on Twitch, they're perfect. They need no correction. Basically, and I saw this post that it was so unbelievable. So out of touch. I was like, is this actually real? Yeah, here it is. I mean, is this parody and I'm just not seeing it? Maybe I'm wrong. Pastor Ben, you know what happened every time in history racists left black people alone? We thrived with great abundance. So then they bombed, lynched, and plundered our communities over and over and over again. Moral of the story, be ready to shoot back because they're planning it again right here on Elon's Twitter. What world are you living in? Like, what? Where are these examples of like the thriving with great abundance? Wakanda is not real, by the way. I need to remind some people, so you can't use that as an example. Hussy Piscoiper on Kick. To be honest, if he's advocating with African Americans voting with their dollars and not supporting Asian businesses, that's fine because it won't make a difference. They steal mostly anyway. Okay, here's the thing. Asians, like if I had one quality where I would like, especially like East Asians, if I would name one quality that stands out overall, it'd be like pragmatism, business, like industriousness. And, you know, Asian business owners are happy to have customers of like any and all races. I've seen boba libs complaining about like white people shopping at Asian grocery stores. And it's like, that's how I know you're westernized. Because if you were actually Chinese, you would want their money. You would want them to be buying stuff from you, right? And it's a great like unifier. Everybody wants like businesses to succeed. And you know, we went to like Panda Fest in Nashville. We went and it was like majority Black people there who were supporting like, you know, buying the Asian food and stuff like that. And it was great. It was a great time. Asian people are happy to serve whoever in their businesses. But one thing that East Asians especially don't tolerate is crime, is violence and shoplifting. That's just not a thing in countries like Japan, in countries like Korea, places like China. And so, you know, you can act all offended, but I don't think you understand that it actually is a big deal when your community like steals, assaults. But I think it's like it's so normalized in some Black neighborhoods, they don't view it that way. It's just crazy. Yeah, and we have just like all of these Black women who've been complaining how unsafe the world is for Black children. My heart cannot take how unsafe this world is for Black children. 41,000 likes. Okay, the main killers of Black children, people in general, are other Black people, something like 93%. And like, don't get me wrong, for all races, intraracial killing is more common than interracial killing, like, you know, same race, because usually you know your killer. But it's like, it's not even close. Like, people by and large don't target Black people if they're not Black, right? So like, you could complain about Asian on Black crime, white on Black crime, but these cases are so rare that they almost don't bear mentioning, because like 93% of the sky high Black homicide rate is by other Black people. Yeah, that's not even like a good point, Chad. It's not even covering like abortion. Yeah, another related Black v. Asian case was Cordell Gooseby randomly shooting into a car, killing a pregnant mother, Ina Kwan. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Black Twitter doesn't give a damn when their people commit these crimes and get off, but they want to trash Asian businesses and threaten Asians because of the Rick Chow case. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there never was any Black Asian solidarity. Let's be clear. Otherwise, if there was, you would be speaking out against the Asian hate, the random beatings, the muggings, the stealing, but you don't. So it's like, that's fine. You don't have to. We said it earlier, no one's going to stand up for yourself except yourself, but it's like, don't expect like us to be outraged that an Asian store owner defended his own store. Here, we have another one. These Black TikToks are,
Listen, bro, to all my Black people, we have got to come to the collective understanding and realization that we cannot continue to be civilized with the rest of the world when they treat us uncivil. We cannot continue to extend empathy outside of our own community when the rest of the world gives us nothing but apathy. They need to understand.
What was their civility before?
And now that there are consequences and repercussions if you decide to try to invoke harm against us as Black people, whether that's towards an individual or the community as a whole. And for any person or group that is willing to step up on behalf of the people in the community and make an example out of any motherfucker that wishes to do us harm, we should support them to the fullest extent. For far too long, we have become engulfed in this facade of comfort from our oppressors, and it has watered down our resistance.
Like, they're so keen to believe that they're the oppressed ones, that they're the victims, that it's like it offers zero room for accountability or introspection. Everything is someone else's problem. Everything is because, you know, oh, like it's the white community, it's the Asian community, it's because of slavery. Never has any one of these people sat back and examined, like, hang on, maybe this is something to do with our own behavior. You know, and it's like, I don't know if you guys follow Callum, formerly of the Lotus Eaters. He has a channel, Britannica Politica. He went to South Africa on like a tourism adventure. That's his thing. He goes to all these crazy different places as a tourist and kind of documents his experience there. And South Africa is basically progressing. They're regressing, right? I mean, there are now dirt roads where paved roads used to be. They're having trouble maintaining electricity and water where it used to not be a problem. And it's funny because they'll blame things like apartheid and systemic racism from white people for these issues, but it's like, but you're actually going backwards is the thing. It's one thing if you're like, oh, well, we never got to develop because we were stolen from. That's doesn't hold water either. But it's like, no, you used to have all these things and now you don't. Now it's more dangerous. It's gotten worse the more white people have left. And it's funny because while, you know, Cape Town is so dangerous now, like the rest of South Africa, there's that white-only town that some Afrikaners have started building. I forget what it's called, Aurelia or something like that. And it's like, these people have managed to build something from nothing, just gone on, you know, in a few years. It's safe, it's clean, it's orderly, it's functional. Meanwhile, you have an entire country you now have control of that used to work and now it no longer does. So there's just no accountability. And I feel like, you know, for non-white people, black people specifically, it's just been like, oh, but racism has been used as an excuse to justify why there's no development, why there's high crime. And it's like, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Mark R. Lopez sounds like he's declaring war, no more mercy for anyone. Where was the mercy previously? That's what I want to know.
We didn't give the rest of the world far too much. We didn't give them the blueprint for resistance. We didn't give them the culture. We didn't give them everything that we didn't have.
The culture. No one wants your culture. Okay. This is toxic culture. I mean, this is the type of culture that probably put it in Carmelo Anthony's mind that stabbing someone who asked you to leave was a good thing to do.
And we still got more to give. But at this point, we need to give to one another. We need to be selfish. And it's okay for us to do so.
Because previously, what, you were so benevolent?
So, at some point in time, we have got to realize that we didn't extend it the branch of diplomacy. We didn't extend it grace. We didn't extend it understanding. And we've given the rest of the world more than that than we didn't give ourselves as a people. And we didn't also give the rest of the world more love than we give one another. And we've got nothing back in return. So at this point, we have got to understand that it's better to be feared than to be loved.
Well, and previously you were trying to be loved. That's the thing. It's so delusional. It's insane. I don't know where they're getting this. But in any case, all their culture is selfish. Yeah, basically. In any case, I think we're going to end the stream there for now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a good weekend. Next stream is going to be Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, same time. And I hope you have a good weekend. Don't forget, if you're into the podcast, we're on the podcast platforms. Make sure to follow me all of the places if you want to keep up to date. And see you next time. Take care.